Hello, my name's Mr. Salles, and as usual I'm going to give you another video showing you how to get the top grades. We're looking at argumentative writing. There are 5 things that I'm going to teach you in this video. Before we dive into the top grades, I'm really excited to introduce to you the sponsor of this video, Nerdy Tutors. You text them a problem or a topic that you're stuck on, they find the tutor with the exact expertise, you use them once and you're done and dusted, or you can come back again and again. Use the link in the description for your first $10 free. And what will you learn in this video? How to structure a response to get really high marks. We'll explore the kinds of question you might get, especially if you're doing GCSEs, but also other exams across the world, how you will plan an answer, how you can use that plan to link your ideas together, and then finally, what else? What's the razzle-dazzle and the sparkle on top that will get you the top grades? There are then 5 key things to the structure. First will be the thesis and introduction. Don't worry if you don't yet know what a thesis is, you will find out in this video. That will be your first paragraph. Your second paragraph will be your argument, giving your opinion. The third paragraph will be a second argument, backing that opinion up. Now, the fourth paragraph will actually disagree with your opinion. It will be the counter-argument, and it's really important to pick genuine objections that are quite powerful. So you'll have to work really hard when you come to the 5th paragraph, your conclusion, to show why the counter-argument isn't strong enough to ruin your opinion. So your final paragraph will, of course, be the conclusion, and it will refute the counter-argument. Students always want to know how long the piece of writing has to be, so I've presented to you a minimum of 5 paragraphs. I will also show you in the video how to increase that if you've got the time in the exam. And then finally you want to know how many words it will be. There are really a minimum of 400 words, but because I'm doing everything in 5s, I'd really like you to get to 500 words. But you can get a pretty decent answer up to grade 7 perhaps in the UK with 400 words. Now, you might get asked to write an argumentative essay at any level of your education, GCSE, A-level, university, and wherever you are in the world. This is a classic kind of argumentative task. Face masks should be compulsory in all schools. To what extent do you agree? Now, I've included a question with the word extent because that forces you to think about the counter-argument. Now, a really good exam question will do that. It will guide you, the student, to think, oh, I need to write about the counter-argument, then I'll be able to show the sophistication of my ideas. Things are less exciting if you're doing a GCSE question, but the good news is they're designed to be easier. So the first way that exams are easier in the UK is that you won't be asked to argue about something that you don't have facts and opinions for. And that's why I've chosen a topical thing like masks for coronavirus. Everybody has heard enough about this to have some sort of opinion. At GCSE, AQA for example, paper 2, question 5, there is a very particular wording. Face masks provide minimal protection. The disadvantages of wearing them at school far outweigh any potential benefits. So you'll be given a clear statement. Then you have to come up with a point of view on that statement, and you have to write in a particular style. This is what your exam paper might say. Write an article for a broadsheet newspaper in which you explain your point of view on this statement. You'll always be guided towards a more educated newspaper. So not a tabloid, but a broadsheet. You need to know what those are. You do not have to agree with the point of view that's given to you. You're going to have a balanced argument about it, just as I showed you in the structure. Now you will notice that there is no word extent in this question. You're not being asked to write a counter-argument. However, including the counter-argument will give your writing more sophistication, and that's what you want. So you're going to include the counter-argument, even though the examiner hasn't asked for it. Okay, your next step is planning. And a plan needs to do three crucial things. Firstly, it needs to generate loads of ideas really quickly, especially if you're in an exam situation. Once you've done that, you need to be able to prioritize those ideas to work out which ones are going to be most persuasive and which ones you can ignore because they were no good. And then finally, you want to sequence them so that they will build that argument. They will have to fit into these 5 parts of the plan that we saw at the beginning. I encourage you to experiment with different forms of planning under timed conditions, and you'll find one that just fits the way your brain works. In this video, I'm going to use a list, although when I'm writing on paper instead of typing, I use a spider diagram. There is some really important advice about starting your plan. You really need to ignore the voice in your head which says, no, that's a rubbish idea. In your planning, you can write down any idea, no matter how stupid it is, because writing a stupid idea will generate a better idea, will generate a new idea, and just writing at speed will give you loads of brilliant ideas by the end of your 3 to 5 minutes. Use any layout that you feel comfortable with, as I've just explained. So in my 3 minutes, I might type out these points for my plan. I don't know why I use the word might. This is what I did type out in my 3 minutes. Now, because I'm an adult, there aren't any stupid ideas in here, and I didn't want to fake that, but some are more powerful than others, and they'll link together in different ways. So that's what you need to do in your planning. You want to go through these and find which ones go together. How can you link them? The other advantage is once you've put all your ideas down, you then find out what your actual opinion is. Because you might not have an opinion when you start writing, you might not be certain. Or like me, you might actually start off with one opinion and then realise when you get to the end, ooh, I need to change that opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. So I hate the idea of wearing a mask in school, but I'm actually, having done my list, going to argue that it's a good idea. I'm as surprised as you are. So let's reorganize the list so that it has 2 arguments and a counter argument. Here is my main argument. You can have a read through these just to see what I've linked together. The important thing to realize is these 4 bullet points in my mind are thematically linked. They go together easily and they'll fit together well in a paragraph. Then I found another 4 bullet points which I think also go together well as a group, and they will be my second main argument and will go together again as a paragraph. Now I come to my counter argument point, and I've gone for a strong one. You can see that because I have 5 bullet points in it. And that's really useful to me because it tells the examiner I've really considered the flaws in my argument, and hopefully in my conclusion I'll be able to overcome them. If I find I have a bullet point not allocated to one of my 3 paragraphs, great news, I will fit it into my conclusion. I know I'll need more when I get there, but I'm not worried about that because I have every confidence that once I've written the whole essay, I'll know exactly what to put in my conclusion, and I'll show you why that will also work for you in a minute. Let's take a step back to that thesis statement, which I said I would explain for you. So your thesis statement needs to summarize your 3 main ideas. Remember, those were the 2 main arguments and your counter argument. And I'm going to suggest that your thesis should actually start with the counter argument. Let's see what that might look like in an example. Learning is a social experience requiring complex communication between teacher and student and between students themselves. So this is going to be an argument for not wearing the mask. Although mask wearing will reduce the effectiveness of teaching, the benefits are more important. So now come my arguments for wearing a mask. Lives will clearly be saved, and students' long-term education will also be improved. Now, these arguments that I'm putting here in my thesis statement are going to be fully explained in my conclusion. And as you'll see when I get to the conclusion, the long term, the future, is what's going to make my conclusion sing out loud and clear that I deserve top grades. If I lay out my thesis this way, you can see that it is structured into 3 parts. It begins with the counter-argument, then it has the argument, my actual opinion, and then it has ideas that I'm going to put in my conclusion. Now, why this is so valuable to me is that it helps the examiner know what I'm going to argue, but crucially, I've already primed the examiner to expect a coherent argument and a top answer. Well, most students know how to write paragraphs where they just put in their opinion, but the crucial game changer in terms of grades is writing a great conclusion. What should a conclusion do? Most students think that you just have to summarize what you've already put in the essay so far. Well, that's pointless. I've read the essay so far, I already know what's in it. Don't bother summarizing it for the examiner. But you are going to pose a question of the reader and you are going to look to the future. Those 2 skills are going to raise the level of your conclusion to high grades. Let's take a look at a sample conclusion to that question. As I've shown you, I want to include a question in my conclusion. I don't have to start with that question, but it's easier if I do. And I also need to consider the future, which will be this bit in bold down here. Let's have a quick read. How likely is a second wave of infection in your town? We all know how damaging closing schools has been and how desperately we need to strive to keep them open. So our behaviour routines in school should include hand washing with soap, not sanitizer. We should encourage teachers and students to wear eye protection too. But it is also tragically clear from repeated research that reduced literacy and numeracy and reduced years spent in education lead to lower income, poorer health and earlier death. Closing schools will actually kill people. Children will actually die at a younger age than their parents, unless we say, not on our watch. It starts with something as simple as a cotton mask. It is worth pointing out 2 things here. You are used to using lots of rhetorical devices or persuasive techniques in your writing, and I've included a lot of them in these 2 paragraphs. I'm not going to explain them at this stage because you already know to bring that to your argumentative writing. You probably also noticed my 1-sentence paragraph for impact, which will take me beyond 5 paragraphs, which is fine, and you'll see me go further in a moment. Because we're now going to look at the ways to get even higher grades. The first thing I want to show you is that you can change the order of your points, in particular beginning with the counter-argument. Remember, I did that when I wrote the thesis. The second thing I'm going to show you is other rhetorical devices, not the ones that you've just normally been taught, but the 3 skills of Greek oratory, Greek speech. Because the ancient Greeks specialized in brilliant debate and articulate argument. These are the 3 rules of Greek rhetoric. Ethos is important, and this is an appeal to the listener or the reader based on the character of the speaker. Now, in an argumentative piece of writing, we're not going to explore your character, but I'm going to show you a way to get round this one. Then we have logos, from which we get the word logic, and obviously we're appealing to the listener or reader's sense of logic. And then we have pathos, an appeal based on emotion. And in argumentative writing, it's probably true to say that emotion has a bigger impact than logic, which is why I'm going to model a technique which uses emotion in the counter-argument. Let's look at what ethos, logos and pathos or pathos might mean in your actual essay. Well, because you can't write about yourself as an expert, it's possible for you to paraphrase experts. This is what I did in my conclusion when I wrote, but it is also tragically clear from repeated research. There's my experts. I haven't named them, but the reader understands that I'm not just making stuff up. Now, logic is easiest to show when you follow through a series of steps to suggest what the future will be like. And remember, writing about the future is the easiest way to get the top grades because it distinguishes your argument from what most students will give. Pathos, that focus on engaging our emotions, should be everywhere in your essay. It doesn't need to be over the top and shocking, but I'm going to call it insistent. It's always there knocking away. And it must be in the counter-argument, because remember, the stronger your counter-argument, the better your conclusion will be when it refutes that counter-argument. Right, we're now going to dive into a second aspect of pathos, which is how you can bring an anecdote into your writing, and I'm going to show it at the beginning of the essay in the counter-argument. Remember, our GCSE question is likely to guide you to something like a broadsheet newspaper. Check out some newspaper columnists because you'll find there is this real pattern of starting with an anecdote. Why would they do that? Because it immediately engages with the reader's emotions. We always connect to stories much more than we do to simple statistics. One death of somebody we know is much more powerful than 100,000 deaths that are just numbers elsewhere in the world. They don't mean the same to us. It's not logical, but it's emotional. So I'm going to start with an emotional anecdote that presents the arguments that are against wearing a mask. You love Miss Brooks' lessons. She has a brilliant way of explaining things, and her voice is full of expression. She brings her subject to life. Not this year, though. She's muted and distant behind her mask. You hate your mask too. Why put your hand up when you know your voice will sound weak and weird when you answer? And just breathing fogs up your glasses. And James thinks it's hilarious to ping the elastic against the backs of your ears at least 3 times a lesson. What happens if you turn around to protest? Instant detention for deliberately breaking social distancing rules. Admit it, learning would be easier on Zoom. If I go back to the bullet points in my counter-argument, that deals with 2 or 3 of them and leaves me with a couple of more to build in. So, for example, when I write about the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918-1919, I'm not going to include that as an anecdote. But I hope you can see how I've tried to grip the reader's attention with this story here. It's also propelled me towards top grades because my 1 paragraph has now become 3, and I'm going to add a 4th to it when I deal with the Spanish flu. Now, if you reread the paragraph, you will also find loads of rhetorical techniques that I'm using. I'm not going to explain those now, but go through and check out how many words I've used that appeal to pathos, your emotions. Now, when we think of pathos, I have highlighted in yellow all the appeals to our emotions. Sometimes it's negative, remember, and other times positive. As I said earlier, I hope you can see how this is insistent rather than overly dramatic and over the top. It isn't designed to be shocking. It's just designed to continually appeal to our emotions. And now you would probably like to learn some more about persuasive writing. Why not click on a video appearing here and here?